You know, in the world of AI, it really feels like a battle of titans, doesn't it? You've got these gigantic, closed-source commercial models from the huge tech companies over here, and then you have the open-source community building these amazing alternatives for everybody. For the longest time, there's been this big gap in performance. But what if that's all about to change? What if that gap is finally closing?
Well, this chart right here tells the whole story. It's the classic David versus Goliath tale. On one side, you've got the giant, a top commercial model, GPT-5. And right there next to it, our David, the open-source InternVL 3.5. Just look at how close that score is. What used to be a massive canyon between them is now looking more like a crack in the pavement. This thing is knocking on the door of the big leagues. So the real question is, how on earth did they do it?
All right, let's formally meet the challenger that's making all this noise. It's called InternVL 3.5, and frankly, it represents a massive leap forward for open-source AI.
So at its heart, InternVL 3.5 is a multimodal model. All that means is it's fluent in both text and images. But, its real secret sauce isn't just one thing. It's how it masterfully blends three key ingredients: versatility, reasoning, and efficiency. It's not just doing one of these things well. It's the combination of all three that makes it a true contender.
So how did they pull this off? Well, it turns out it's not about just throwing more and more data at the problem. Nope. The first secret weapon is all about a much, much smarter way of training the AI.
To really get what they did, we first have to talk about something called reinforcement learning. Now, this might sound super technical, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Think about training a dog. When it does something you want, you give it a treat. That's a reward. When it doesn't, well, no treat. That's kind of like a penalty. The AI basically learns in the same way, through this trial and error process of getting rewards.
And this, right here, is where the genius comes in. InternVL 3.5 uses a clever two-step process called Cascade Reinforcement Learning. Step 1, the offline part, is like an artist sketching a rough outline. It's a super efficient warm-up where the model learns from a huge library of really high-quality examples. Then comes step 2, the online part. This is where the artist adds all the fine details. The model starts generating its own data and uses it to refine its performance, turning that rough sketch into an absolute masterpiece. This course-to-fine strategy is just way more stable, efficient, and in the end, way more effective. But being smart is only half the battle, right? These big AI models are famously power-hungry and, well, kind of slow. InternVL 3.5's second secret weapon tackles this problem head-on, making it not just smart, but also shockingly fast.
Yeah, just let that number sink in for a second. More than 4 times faster than the previous version. In the AI world, that is a gigantic leap. It makes it so much more practical for people to actually use in the real world. So, how did they do it?
Okay, a huge part of the answer is this thing called the Visual Resolution Router, or VIR for short. The best way to think of it is as a super smart gatekeeper for images. It looks at a picture and instantly decides which parts need to be seen in glorious high definition and which parts are fine in low res. It's like a smart camera that knows exactly when to zoom in for the critical details and when to pull back to save power, all without hurting the final result. It's brilliant.
The other piece of this speed puzzle is how they actually deploy the model. So the old way, which you see on the left, was like a single-lane country road. The vision tasks and the language tasks had to line up one after the other, creating this massive traffic jam. But the new decoupled method on the right, that turns that road into a multi-lane superhighway. It runs the tasks at the same time, in parallel, on different GPUs, and boom, the bottleneck is just gone.
All right, so we've seen the clever training and the awesome efficiency boosts, but what does it all add up to? Let's look at the results. Let's see the receipts and find out how this thing actually performs when the rubber meets the road.
So, remember that whole course-to-fine training we were talking about? That artist sketch method? Well, here's the payoff. It resulted in a 16% jump in the model's ability to reason. And this isn't just about spotting cats in photos. This is about understanding complex, multi-step problems, which, for AI, is a really big deal.
Now this is the slide that really gets interesting. Let's just look at that first row for general tasks. InternVL 3.5 actually scores a tiny bit better than GPT-5. Now sure, it still has some catching up to do in other areas, like text-centric stuff, but the very fact that an open-source model can go toe-to-toe and even edge out a commercial giant on general skills is wow! It's a landmark achievement.
And that really brings us to the main point here. InternVL 3.5 isn't just another model they've released. It is now the state-of-the-art, the best in class among all open-source options. And it has seriously narrowed that performance gap that once seemed impossibly wide.
But this whole story is so much bigger than just one model. The success of a powerful open-source challenger like this has massive ripple effects for the entire field of AI. So why should you care? Why does this matter so much?
It really boils down to 4 key things. First up is accessibility. It means you no longer have to be a tech giant with a billion-dollar budget to build on top-tier AI. Next is transparency. Anyone can pop the hood and see exactly how it works, which builds trust and helps make things safer for everyone. And that transparency directly fuels innovation because now a global community of brilliant people can experiment and contribute, speeding up progress for all of us. And finally, and this one is huge, it creates real competition. It ensures the future of AI isn't locked down and controlled by just a handful of companies.
And that leaves us with the big question, the one I want you to think about. InternVL 3.5 has proven that being smarter, not just bigger, is a winning strategy. So the question is no longer if open source can compete. The real question now is, can this kind of clever innovation finally allow it to close the gap for good? The race is definitely on.